What if I told you there's a single fundamental pattern that shapes pretty much everything? I'm talking a pattern that connects the code on your computer, the way you think, how societies evolve, and maybe even the fabric of reality itself. Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today, the wild, mind-bending idea of recursion. Let's get into it.
Okay, so this sounds like some kind of cryptic riddle, right? And it kind of is. But this idea of a self-referencing looping process, it's the key to this whole thing. To really get what this means, we've got to start where the concept is the most solid, the most concrete. And for a lot of us, the first place we ever bumped into the word recursion was probably computer science. It's a totally foundational idea for how we build smart systems. So what is recursion really? Well, in programming, it's this super elegant idea of self-reference. Instead of just a simple loop, a function solves a big problem by literally calling itself to solve a slightly easier version of the same problem. It keeps doing that over and over until it hits a super simple stopping point. Programmers call it the base case. Think of it like those Russian nesting dolls. You open one and there's a smaller, identical one inside. And you keep going until you get to that tiny final doll.
This little countdown function is the perfect example. So to count down from, say, 3, it prints 3. And then it calls itself with the number 2. Then that call prints 2 and calls itself again with 1. It does it one more time, calls itself with 0, and bam, it hits that if condition, the base case. The whole chain of calls stops and unwinds. It's elegant, it's powerful, and yeah, it's a little trippy.
Okay, so that's how it works in code. But here's where it gets really, really interesting. What if this pattern isn't just for silicon chips? What if the software running inside our own heads, our consciousness, runs on a similar, recursive principle? This idea of mastering your own internal world, of being able to just summon focus or calm or energy whenever you want, it all hinges on a kind of self-awareness. It's not just about being focused. It's about knowing you're focused and being able to manage that state.
And this brings us to this concept of meta-states. Put simply, it's a state about a state. Think about it. Have you ever felt angry about being anxious? Or maybe felt proud of how productive you were being? That's it. That's your mind performing a recursive operation. It's observing itself and then creating a new feeling about that first feeling. It's self-reflexive consciousness happening right there in your head.
And this isn't just some weird mental quirk. You can actually train this. This personal genius pattern shows you how. First, you access a state, like deep focus. Then you mentally step back and just observe that feeling of focus. Then you step back into it, but now with this new layer of awareness. You're creating this powerful feedback loop, literally applying recursion to your own mind to strengthen and control your mental states. It's a game changer for personal mastery. So we have this pattern in code, and we have it in our own minds. Let's zoom out again. Could this same recursive loop be shaping the very fabric of our cultures and societies?
The brilliant thinker Gregory Bateson argued that we've been looking at survival all wrong. He said it's not just about the individual organism struggling to survive. The true unit of survival is the organism plus its environment. They are one single, interconnected system, constantly looping back and influencing each other. You literally can't separate them.
And building on that, anthropologist Victor Turner noticed this fascinating rhythm inside societies. He saw that they move between these periods of rigid order, which he called structure, and then these temporary, almost chaotic moments he called anti-structure. Think about carnivals or big festivals or certain rituals where all the normal social rules just get thrown out the window for a bit.
So this anti-structure period, it works like a societal reset button. By just briefly dissolving the old hierarchies, it creates what Turner called a social average, basically a blank slate. And from that blank slate, new ideas and new structures can emerge. This whole cycle, structure, chaos, renewal, is a massive social recursion that lets a culture adapt and evolve over time.
Now, this idea of a system renewing itself through a cycle, it brings us right back where we started, into the world of tech. because this ancient pattern of self-reference is now at the absolute cutting edge of artificial intelligence. So there's this new framework called Ladder, and it teaches large language models how to teach themselves. It's brilliant. You give an AI a really hard problem, one it just can't solve. The AI then recursively breaks that problem down, generating a whole curriculum of easier, related problems for itself. It learns by solving the simple stuff first, then uses that new knowledge to climb its way back up and finally crack the original hard problem. And the results? I mean, they're staggering. On a set of really tough university-level math problems, the base AI model got a measly 1% right. But after it used Ladder to teach itself, its accuracy skyrocketed to 82%. That's not just a little improvement, it's a monumental leap in what it can do, all because the model recursively taught itself. This leads to a really profound, almost sci-fi idea. The instructions we give to AI, our prompts, they're not static anymore. They're becoming dynamic, living recursive organisms. The AI reflects on its own output, figures out what went wrong, and then rewrites its own instructions to do better next time. The system isn't just learning, it's learning how to learn. It's a recursive loop of self-improvement. Okay, we've seen this pattern in code, in our consciousness, in society, and now in cutting-edge AI. So for the final step, we have to ask the biggest question there is. Is recursion just a useful pattern we see in reality, or is it the pattern of reality itself? Let's go back to that incredible insight from Gregory Bateson. He saw that the looping self-correcting process of an ecosystem, that's the unit of survival, is functionally identical to the looping self-correcting process of our thoughts, the unit of mind. It suggests life and thought are built on the exact same dynamic. And you know what? Modern AI research is saying something very similar. Some theorists don't see thought as a simple A to B straight line anymore. They're starting to imagine it as a dynamic, recursive vector field. Not a line, but a swirling vortex of ideas and relationships, constantly feeding back on itself. And this idea just keeps popping up everywhere. You see echoes of it in philosophy, even in theoretical physics. Whether it's the simulation hypothesis or theories of consciousness, they often describe reality as some kind of self-referential system, a construct that, in some bizarre way, observes itself into existence. You know, a pattern is fundamental when our most abstract thinkers, mathematicians, have to invent a whole new language just to talk about it. They developed things like category theory, which is basically a math of systems and relationships, built specifically to describe these nested, self-referential structures. The pattern is absolutely everywhere. So this brings us to the ultimate takeaway. This isn't just about simple repetition. It's about recursive transformation. Every cycle builds on the last one, twisting and folding and changing itself. And what that suggests is that reality isn't some static stage where things happen. Reality is the happening. It's a process of recursive unfolding, constantly twisting itself into new forms of being. Which leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If this pattern of self-reference, of a process calling on itself to create what comes next, is truly fundamental, then is it possible that reality itself is a story that is, in the very act of being told, writing its own next chapter? A single, recursive loop that might just contain everything. Thanks for joining me on this one.